Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to our next screencast where we are starting a new topic of the neuromuscular system. Okay, so a few bits of the specification we're going to be looking at today, looking at the physiology of the neuromuscular system, and we're going to be thinking specifically about different fiber types, the differences between them, and we're thinking about how they work together in physical activity. So, our key question is what are the different characteristics of muscle fibers and how do they vary between individuals? So, a bit of a recap from GCSE about our different fiber types. We have got our type 1, which we call our slow oxidative fibers. Okay, and these are the fibers that you would mainly associate with kind of marathon runners, endurance activities, swimming, cycling, things like that. Obviously, your slow twitch events. Then we've got two types of fast twitch fibers. We've got our type 2A, which is our fast oxidative glycolytic fibers, okay? And they are kind of the medium type fibers. So they are fast twitch, but they have endurance qualities. And we'll talk about the differences a little bit more going forward, okay? So there are, when we look at the word oxidative, okay, there is a certain amount of endurance quality in there, but it is obviously a fast twitch fiber. So your true fast twitch fibers are your type 2X fibers, your fast glycolytic fibers, okay? And these are the ones that you associate with your power activities such as sprinting, shot put, long jump, triple jump, things like that. Okay, your true fast twitch powerful fibers. So our different types of fibers are actually part of our key terms that we need to be able to define. Okay, so our type 1 there, also known as slow twitch muscle fibers, for sustained low aerobic work and can be used for long periods of time without fatiguing. Okay, so that's your definition of your type 1 fibers. Your type 2A fibers, the definition is obviously these are fast oxidative glycolytic muscle fibers, fast contraction, large force, fatigue easily, and they're used in anaerobic work but can be improved through endurance training to increase their resistance for fatigue. Okay, so there's those middle fibers that we just talked about previously. Okay, that definition there. Definition for our type 2X fibers are our fast glycolytic muscle fibers, very rapid contractions, very large forces, fatigue very easily, and used in anaerobic work. Okay, so those three definitions you could be asked to give in the exam. It's one of our key terms in our glossary. So, looking at the differences between these fibers, there's a few kind of structural and functional differences that we need to be aware of. Okay, so in terms of color, okay, this picture obviously shows them a little bit more. So our type 1 fibers are red in colour, as we can see in this image here. Okay, and the reason obviously being for that, if we think about they're being used for aerobic activities, we know that our oxygenated blood is red. Okay, so we can associate that colour there. Okay, our middle type 2A are kind of red to pink. And our type 2B are more white in colour. Okay, and I think I've got another image to show that a little bit later on. Okay, so in terms of fibre diameter, again, what you might expect, our slow twitch are smaller. If you think about the, how endurance athletes look compared to how our power athletes look. Okay, they're smaller in diameter, medium in diameter for our type 2A, and then obviously, as we'd expect, our power, fast twitch fibres are our larger diameter fibres. So in terms of capillary density, again, we're thinking about capillaries, kind of oxygen, our gases exchange. So we'd expect our type 1 to be high, our middle one's midway, and then our type 2X is low as well. Okay, so these ones quite straightforward in terms of what we would expect from those fibers. So again, if we just look at this image here, we can see the different types of fibers. It's got a bit of zoomed in here. Okay, so our slow oxidative fibers, they're darker in colour there, as we can see. So the more red type fibers. Our fast oxidative fibers, these ones, kind of the middle colour, and our bigger, larger diameter type 2X fibers there are fast glycolytic fibers. Are the slightly lighter in colour, obviously, as we talked about their bigger diameter. Okay, so it gives you a bit of a visual of a cross section of muscle fibres there. So, in terms of our structural adaptations carrying on myoglobin, again, we associate with aerobic activity. So, our type 1 fibers are high in myoglobin content. Okay, our fast oxidative are also high in our myoglobin content because they've got their endurance quality, whereas our type 2X are low in that myoglobin content. Okay, similar with our mitochondrial, again, we're thinking about that oxygen carrying capacity. We've got lots of mitochondria in our type 1 fibers, midway in our type 2A, and then very few in our type 2X. So, energy stores, again, our type 1 have very few energy stores. Okay, they're using kind of more longer burning fuels for that activity, so it's not stored in those muscles, in those fibers. Whereas our fast twitch fibers, our 2A and our 2X, have got high energy stores for those high intensity power activities that they are performing. Okay, so in terms of functional capacity, how they work, obviously our aerobic capacity, again, quite self-explanatory what we'd expect here. High for our type 1, moderate for our type 2A, and then low for our type 2X. Okay, obviously due to their the activities they're suited to. Motor unit strength, again, probably what we would expect here. Low, high, and high. Okay, because if we think about our power activities, these two are higher. And obviously continuous activities are going to be low. And then recruitment order. And by that we mean in what order we recruit these different fibers, we use these different fibers. Okay, so our type 1 would be first, 2A second, and 2X third. Okay, and I'll give you a bit of a scenario to put that into context a little bit later on. Okay, if you want to pause the video and have a little look at this table, it just gives you a bit more detail on the differences between those fibers in terms of their structural and functional capacities. And then again, in this one here, just a bit more detail, some of the points we've already covered so far. Okay, so carrying on with the differences between fibers and looking about how they vary between individuals. So we talked about fiber recruitment just briefly before. I can see here, obviously, if I'm doing light to medium work, I'm going to be using my slow twitch fibers. Okay, if I'm doing medium work there, I will be using my slow twitch fibers, recruiting them, and then I will also be recruiting my 2A fibers. Okay, and if I'm doing heavier load work, I recruit all three types of fibers, obviously my 2X fibers at the top there for that heavier load work. Okay, so it's not just a case of only using one type of muscle fiber. I'm recruiting them first, second, and then third, obviously working up to that heavy load activity. So if I was trying to push this rock, first of all, I would recruit my slow twitch fibers. Okay, it wouldn't move. Then I would need to get involved my type 2A fibers. Okay, still not moving. And then in order to move it, I would be using all three types of muscle fibers, but recruiting them in that order: first, second, third. Okay, so individual muscle differences. Okay, by this we mean that different athletes have different proportions of muscle fibers. Okay, every athlete will have some of all of them, but different athletes will have varying amounts depending on the activity they are suited to, or they're suited to because of those amounts of fibers. So obviously here we've got two different athletes. We've got Paula Radcliffe here, who would be who was obviously a marathon runner, an endurance runner. She will have predominantly type 1 muscle fibers. Whereas Johnny Peacock over here, okay, sprinter, he will have predominantly type 2X fibers, or he will have a higher proportion compared to other athletes. Okay, your average person will obviously have a combination of all three. They might have slightly more of one type, but not to the same level as these guys here, obviously, who are elite athletes suited to those events. We also have muscle differences within our own bodies, okay? So Jessica Ennis here, I've obviously highlighted her arms and her legs. Her arms will tend to have more fast twitch fibers. If you think about the movements that you do with your arms, are normally quicker movements, whereas your legs will have a higher percentage of slow twitch fibers, because we do things like walking most of the day. Okay, so there's lots of slow twitch fibers, but obviously some athletes will have larger numbers of fast twitch fibers than others, and then will obviously be suited to things like sprinting, and then others will have more slow twitch, will be suited to things like endurance running. So individual muscle differences exist within an individual's different parts of their body. Okay, so just to put it into perspective here again, thinking about the percentage of different fiber types in different sports people. Again, so on marathon runners, we've got predominantly slow twitch fibers, and things like sprinters have a low percentage of slow twitch fibers. If you want to pause and have a little look at that table, it just shows you kind of the individual differences and comparing between males and females as well. Okay, so in terms of our characteristics in our muscle fibers, there's arguments as to whether it's nature or nurture that these differences exist. Okay, so obviously thinking about proportions of fibers are genetically determined. Okay, we can't change those proportions. Men have more testosterone. Again, that's genetics, so they're going to have higher fast twitch fibers. Women have greater resistance to fatigue. Okay, so they're slow twitch. Or maybe type 2A. And your predominant fiber type is limited. Again, nature is a natural thing. And specific performance exercises are more significant. Okay, we can train our muscle fibers, and there is a certain amount of nurture and adaptation that we can experience. Okay, so we can experience something called hyperplasia, which is where we're converting our type 2X to type 2A. So we're increasing that aerobic capacity, that endurance capacity of those muscle fibers. Obviously, it's staying within our fast twitch fibers. We're not converting them to type 1, but we are, increasing that endurance capacity of those fibers. Okay, and this would be due to long, steady training. We would lose our speed, but obviously increase that endurance. And we're increasing the efficiency of the blood supply, so we can link this to our cardiovascular adaptations, thinking about capillarization and things like that. And that's a nurture aspect of the differences between athletes. Okay, so again, thinking about training, but anaerobic training this time, so we can increase our fast twitch fiber size. That's our hypertrophy, linking back to one of our key terms that we've had earlier in the year. Increasing the number of fast twitch fibers, so our hyperplasia, again, so from type 2A to 2X. And then lack of training will cause atrophy, okay, which is obviously the reverse of hypertrophy. And those reverses if we don't keep that adaptation or that high level of anaerobic training up there. Okay, so that's kind of the nurture aspect of that, obviously linking to our anaerobic training. Okay, so we've looked at all those different things. If you want to look back and pause anywhere within the video, feel free to do so. But we'll be reviewing these bits and pieces during the lesson.